Boyd, we're sitting here under the wing of an airplane that is unique at Oshkosh this year and frankly unique in the world. It is the only flyable PB4Y-2 privateer. How did you get to be involved with this airplane?
Well, I actually flew this very airplane on a fire contract back in 1978. And when the airplane was purchased, a gentleman by the name of Woody Grantham, who owned two of them and had contracted them as air tankers, he and I became friends back in 1974. He knew that I had experience in the airplane, and through mutual friends, Rick and Janice Loomis, they worked on me for 3 years and finally convinced me that I need to come and fly the airplane. And I've got about 15 hours in it since that time over the last couple of months. It turned out to be more exciting and more fun than I thought it would be, so that's how I ended up here.
What makes it an exciting and fun airplane to fly?
Well, it's like an old knuckleheaded Harley. It makes a lot of noise, rattles and shakes, and it's one of a kind.
Tell us a little bit about how this airplane went from being a Navy airplane to a firefighting airplane to now a display airplane at Oshkosh that represents the type of airplane.
It was built in San Diego, California, and then it was flown to Litchfield, Arizona to be armored. While it was setting on the field in Litchfield, the war ended. So the airplane went back to San Diego, I believe, and then at some point the Coast Guard acquired it, and then it went through different ownerships until somewhere in the late 60s, and then Hawkins and Powers Aviation purchased it. But the bulk of its flying time, somewhere around 7,000 hours, probably 90 to 95% of that time was spent as a fire bomber. I flew it as an air tanker. I flew for Hawkins and Powers for 7 fire seasons and flew most all of their airplanes. They had 7 of them at one time. I think I flew 4 of them on contract, and the others I flew doing test hops and that sort of thing.
Does it fly differently now than it did as a water bomber?
You know, it was 37 years ago. I remembered it out of the fleet of the 7, it was the lightest on the ailerons, on the controls, but it doesn't feel that way now. We used to say, you know, when I was flying them years ago, that you had to be a monkey to get in it and an ape, and I mean an ape to fly it, because it's a heavy airplane. There's no boosted controls, it's all cables. There's no servos on the controls. It's a handful at times.
You said it was heavy on the controls, loud and rattled, but let's talk a little bit more specifically about some of the handling characteristics of the airplane.
Well, of course, when we were firebombing with it, we were loading it up pretty heavy, using most of all the runway, and then we'd get airborne and climb a couple hundred feet a minute, depending on the altitude, maybe a little bit less than that. 300, 400, 500 foot a minute down at sea level. Up in Colorado, a couple of hundred feet a minute, so you had to be real patient with the airplane. Performed pretty good once it was empty, but we were carrying about 24,000 pounds of retardant with it and 1,000 gallons of fuel. So we were loading it up to its gross weight. Now that it's empty, you know, it'll climb 1,000, 1,200 foot a minute. It has pretty good performance. Speed-wise, we cruise at 160 to 170 knots. With the wing AD, they've restricted the speed on the airplane. It has a 200 knot speed now. My memory is it was somewhere around 260, 270 knots was the red line. Of course, it wouldn't cruise that fast, but, you know, point it downhill and you can pick up those speeds. The airplane's extremely maneuverable. It is heavy on the controls. It's a real honest and forgiving airplane. I think anybody with a little bit of time in it would find it a pretty easy airplane to fly.
What are these engines?
These are our 2600-35s off of B-25s. After the war, the Air Corps or Air Force, I think they became used the B-25 as an instrument trainer, so they had a lot of engines that they overhauled for that role. This makes it a better airplane for the platform it was being used for, which was a fire bomber.
Well, great. Well, Boyd, I know you're flying in the air show this afternoon. We're looking forward to seeing that, and enjoy your tour for the summer, and thanks very much for taking some time to talk with us.
It's been great fun. I've really enjoyed myself here this week.
Aero-TV is brought to you by An interactive Lynx application is available in the Apple and Android app stores. This free app is a virtual simulation of the Lynx NGT 9000 touchscreen cockpit display that lets pilots interact with the unit as if they had a real system in their hands. The app covers the entire Lynx family of ADS-B products, including features and options to help customers decide which Lynx model is right for their needs.